Hey, welcome to a Better Black America live watch party. Hey, let's talk about it.
Kamala Harris. It's a good day.
Oh, they shook hands. She wanted to do a dap.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy. And the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised in the middle class.
Already a word salad.
And I am actually the only person on the stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
She's a little nervous.
We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. I was actually, my mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother.
Telling stories.
She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses.
Her plan.
Knowing they are part of the backbone of America.
How you going to do that?
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations.
See, she's not even standing on business.
Which will result in $5 trillion from America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month.
Wow.
Economists have said that Trump sales tax would
She talked about more of Trump than herself.
In about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Wow.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails,
you didn't even mention her name,
institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States.
She's being affected about what he's saying.
Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over.
Look at her reactions.
They're going in violently. These are the people that
Look at her reactions.
Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I'd like to let Vice President...
Go ahead, girl. What you got, Kamala?
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Everybody lost their job during COVID.
The worst public health epidemic in a century.
COVID.
Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean
Look at him. He's
up
not even
Donald
looking
Trump's
at her.
mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations.
You had 3.5 years to build.
But I'm going to tell you on this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What
He didn't
you're
call
gonna
her.
hear tonight
He didn't even mention her name.
is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
Been totally
I believe
debunked.
very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common. than
Yeah, we
what
want a real
separates us.
president.
And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President
Yeah,
Trump,
right.
maybe you're gonna give your response.
Go ahead. What you got,
I
Trump?
have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with
Project 25, exactly.
That's out there.
Lots.
I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got.
He's on record.
Came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody
On
knows
record.
I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially
Woo!
and create a great economy.
Woo!
Like before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic.
She need to
And
stop
the
looking at
pandemic
him.
was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We
That was
did a
polio.
phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was
Wow.
higher than it was before the pandemic.
She
came
need to
in.
just stand there and
Nobody's ever
stop.
seen anything
Look at
like
this.
it. We made
She's
ventilators
irritated.
for the entire world. We got
Come on,
gowns,
Kamala.
We got masks. We did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back and
From COVID, and that's fact.
Benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So
So,
Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you
Oh
look
my
at
God.
it,
Come on, Kamala.
It's all about tax breaks for the rich.
that little podium. What's wrong with her
I'm
podium?
offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future
The
of
check
America.
writers.
What Goldman Sachs has said
Uh-huh.
is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite
Scare
recession.
tactics, man. She's
You just
scaring y'all.
have to look at where
We
are
choose
and where
Jesus.
we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is
That's
more
her talking
interested in
point.
defending himself than he is in looking out
That's
for
her
you.
talking point.
It's just a soundbite. They give it said. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's
Wow.
a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country.
Yes.
And just to finish
Run
off,
that bread.
she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like
Come on, Harris, don't do that.
sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her.
Come on,
plan.
Harris,
She
fix your
doesn't have a
face.
plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something.
She acting like Biden.
The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this.
Yeah, drill down on
Your plan
tariffs.
is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs
Good question,
of 20%
ABC.
on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing,
No.
medication, arguing it costs.
We produce our own.
$4,000
It'll force us
a
to
year.
focus on our
Do you
own.
believe Americans can afford higher prices because of
It won't happen. Break it down.
Higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off.
Yeah.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take
Whoa.
billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation
History.
perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and
Me
buy
neither.
cereal or bacon or eggs or
Wow.
anything else. The people of our country are
Come on, Harris.
absolutely dying.
You
with what
looking
they've done.
irritated.
They've destroyed the
Look at it.
economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do
Whoa.
want to ask for your response.
Ooh, she irritated.
Because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
respond?
Well, let's be clear that
Answer the
Trump
question.
administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars.
Answer the
You wanna talk about
question.
His deal with China, what he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency.
Answer the question. Why y'all still got his tariffs?
American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition.
No,
for the
China's a
21st
check writer.
century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to
Why is she
support
talking to him
America's
like that? Look at
workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick
Uh-oh, Joe.
in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about
I mean,
it.
how many times she gonna say his
He
name?
actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi! Exclamation point.
Wow.
When we know
At a presidential
that Xi was
debate,
responsible
she's
for
talking about
collecting
President
and
Xi,
not giving us
thanking him.
transparency about
Wow.
their origins
Check
of
writer.
COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy.
Ooh.
Everything that she believed 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now.
Yeah.
I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's going to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows.
Ooh, she
Her
is.
father's a Marxist.
He is.
professor.
Renowned Marxist.
And he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to
Wow.
our country, and when you look at these millions
Wow.
and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country.
He killing her
They're
body
criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know,
Ain't nobody in the crowd.
Talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that
Wow.
can happen to our economy.
This gonna be our only
They
debate.
have, and she has destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say.
Keep a straight face. Come on. Think about poker, Harris.
Thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the
Moving
issue of
on.
abortion. President
Ooh.
Trump touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade.
Ooh.
Last year, you said that
Take it to
you
the
were proud
States.
to be the most pro-life president in American history.
Take it to the
Then
States.
Last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state
Take it to the
of Florida, you
States.
surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban
States
because you
term
initially
limits.
said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban.
This is a Democratic
Vice President
issue.
Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because
Mm-hmm.
you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust
So
you?
the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, and you know the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month.
Yeah.
They even have, and you can look
No
at the
term
governor
limits.
of West
Fact.
Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll
Even if it
execute
have
the
a
baby.
heartbeat.
And that's why I did that.
Yeah.
Because that predominates. Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think is
She are-
a
come on, Harris,
by
look
the
at
way,
her
for our
face.
country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month
Yeah.
is absolutely fine. He also
Executive
says
order.
execution
He did.
after birth. It's
Even with a
execution
heartbeat,
after
that's
abortion
facts.
because the
Fact
baby is
check.
born is okay. And that's not okay with me. Hence the vote. But what I did is something.
What's she thinking, y'all?
52 years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in
It's
the
a state issue
exception
now.
for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in
Rape,
it.
incest, life of the
85%
mother.
Republicans do. Exceptions, very important.
Exceptions.
But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
Constitution says we the
I did great
people.
service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, what is your response to President Trump?
Well, as I said, you're
Help her out.
lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over
should be a
20
state's issue.
states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which
You just
understand
said
what that means.
that's a
A
lie.
survivor of a
That's a
crime
lie.
of violation to their body does
That's
not
a
have
lie.
the right to make a decision
Rape,
about what
incest,
happens
life of
to
the
their
mother.
body next. That is immoral.
That's a lie. It's immoral to kill a
What
baby
does that
after
have
a
to
heartbeat.
abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to
What's she
do
so angry
with
for?
her body. I have talked with women.
What about
around
morals?
our country. You want to talk about this is what people want.
So this is the president.
Women
That's what we
who
vote
want
for.
to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency.
He's so
room
still. Look
because
at him.
healthcare
She trying to
providers
talk to him. He ain't
are afraid
even
they might go
rattled.
to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want
With that little podium.
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry.
He
a
said
pregnancy
rape,
to
incest,
term.
and life of the mother.
They don't want that. And I pledge to you,
I pledge.
Congress passes a bill to put back in place the
No.
protections of Roe v. Wade. As President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would
There it
be
is
national
again. They scaring y'all,
abortion, a
man.
monitor that would be monitoring your
They scaring the
pregnancies,
Democrats,
your
man.
miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own
And
body,
you don't even have a child,
should not
Harris.
be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it
Well, I
came to
won't
that?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans
Ooh.
and it ended up being a total catastrophe.
Bam.
The student loans and then
Reparations.
I think
Bam.
probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he
George
spends all the
Soros.
time on the beach. But look,
Oh,
Her
my
boss
bad.
went out
Biden.
and said, "We'll do it again. We'll do it a different way." And he went out, got rejected again by the
Yeah.
Supreme Court.
She
so
need to
all
relax,
these students
though.
got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans.
Yeah.
They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way
That was a setup.
They talked about that they talk about
No student loans, baby.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, JD Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with JD. In all fairness, JD, and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because
Back
she
in the
never be
States.
able to get it. Just like she couldn't get student loans, they couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans.
And they
taunted
destroyed reparations.
Young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
We the
And
people.
Vice President Harris, want to give you
Look
your
at
time
it.
to respond, but I do want to ask
Come on,
you, would
Harris.
you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
Good question.
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as
No.
you
No.
correctly mentioned,
No restrictions.
nowhere in
Catch that.
America
No restrictions.
is a woman carrying
No
her body
restrictions.
to term and
No
and
restrictions.
asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women.
No
of America.
restrictions. Remember
And
that.
understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray
No
and
restrictions.
dream of having a family.
That was the
are
question.
being
No
denied
restrictions.
IVF treatments. What is happening
Now she
in
talking
our
about
country?
IVF, which is a
Working people, working women,
test tube baby
who
born in a
are working
petri
one or
dish.
two jobs, who can barely afford
Wow.
childcare as it is.
We only about
have to travel
15
to
minutes in,
another
people.
state
22 minutes in,
to get
people.
on a plane sitting next to
What
strangers.
is she talking about?
To go and get the health care she needs.
She's passionate
Barely
about
can
killing
afford to
babies.
do it, and what you are putting her through is
He ain't putting her through
unconscionable.
nothing.
And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
But
And
would
that
you
is
sign a
why
bill of restrictions is
in
what
every
she
state
asked.
Where this issue has been on the ballot in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it.
But she's
I have
with
been
no
a leader
restrictions,
on
though.
Fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you do that? Why don't you answer
Why
that question?
don't you
That's
answer the question?
problem.
Would you
Because
be-
Whoa.
you could
23
do
minutes
abortion
in.
The 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth.
Answer.
Just look at the former governor
Answer.
of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and
No
we
term
decide
limits.
What we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're gonna try
Boom.
to
You
get
see, they had to help her out because,
We know it's an
boom,
issue that's important to
she lost that round.
Democrats, voters across the board in this
So
country.
she don't support
Like
no term
President
limits on
Harris,
abortion.
President Biden with getting to the root
Zero.
causes of migration from Central America.
Babies have
We know that
heartbeats
illegal
inside the
crossing
womb.
reached a record high.
Boom, boom,
Biden
boom, boom. That's the
administration.
heartbeat.
This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the
hot,
numbers since
boy.
then
Woo,
have dropped
he hot. Look at it.
significantly. But my question to you tonight is
Mm-hmm.
why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently
Woo!
for President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations.
Man, knock it off. You locked up the bros,
drugs,
boy. 3
and
strikes.
Human beings.
Okay.
And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported.
Mm-hmm.
And that bill would have
From a
put
political
1,500
perspective.
more border agents on the border to help those
From a
folks
political
who are working
perspective.
there right now overtime trying
Man,
to do
she's
their
outmatched
job.
right now.
It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the
Man, you
United
could
States.
do an
I know
executive
there's
action
somebody
right now.
watching tonight
Executive
who
order.
is personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations
Man,
for
come on,
trafficking
stop
in
it,
guns,
man.
drugs, and human
Stop
beings.
it.
But you know what happened to that bill?
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump got on the phone.
Yeah, made a
called
G
up
call.
some folks in Congress and
Made a
said
G
kill
call.
the bill. And you know why?
Uh-huh.
Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Y'all never wanted to
And
fix it.
understand,
And just
this
remember,
comes
they
at a
said this
time
6 months before
where
the
people
election
of our
that they
country
Democrats
actually
moved.
need a leader who engages in solutions,
Mm-hmm.
who actually addresses the problems at hand.
Why are you looking at
But
him?
what
He ain't even
we
looking
have
at
in
you.
the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Yeah,
And I'll
okay.
tell you something. He's
He
going to
wanted
talk
to build
about
a wall.
immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk
That's
about
the Asian
Linda
man said
Black
that. He just
Panther.
having a
And
conversation.
what you will also notice is that
She is so
people are
off cue.
leaving his rallies early
Wow.
out of exhaustion and boredom.
And you know,
And
they
I'm
leave
telling
her
you,
rallies
what you
early.
will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your
Wow.
desires. And I'll
So
tell
she
you,
doing closing
you
arguments as a
deserve
prosecutor.
president
She
who
didn't prove her
actually will
case,
first, and I
so
pledge
she
to you
doing a
that I
closing
will.
argument.
Vice President
Keep
Harris,
pledging.
President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Keep pledging.
Let me just ask though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the board.
First, let me respond this to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's busting them in and paying them to be there.
Fact.
And then
Fact.
showing
Look
them
at her
in a
face.
different light.
Fact.
So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
Fact.
We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
She started
Because
it.
people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject.
Yeah.
What they have done to our country by allowing these
Israel
millions
war.
and millions of people to come
Ukraine
into our
at
country,
war.
and look at what's happening
Russia
in the
at
towns
war.
all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
She's talking about
And it's a
immigrants
shame.
and it's
As far
facts.
as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase. Make America
great again.
She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have
Make
a chance
America,
of
make
success.
African American black again.
Success will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and
Mm-hmm.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant.
See, they helping her out.
See people on
Let me
television.
just say here, this is
The people on
this
television
is-
say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
Yeah, you are. You helping her out. They doing their best to help her out.
The people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John
The ball
McCain,
walls for Trump.
including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congressmember Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former
Wow.
chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has
Gotta
said
love
he
him
is
or hate him.
dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has
He
said
wanna
the
fight.
nation, the Republic, would never survive another
Come
Trump
on, man. We've
term.
survived all of this.
And
Stop
when we
it.
listen
Scare tactics.
to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people
That's what
are
we
not
voting for.
being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
No, it's not.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond.
Yeah. Thank you, because when I hear that, See, I'm a different kind of a person.
Yeah.
I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job.
Right.
I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan,
Woo.
Taliban, and the 13 people who's
Was
killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents.
And she was the last one in the room.
They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody
Has ever seen.
So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So
Good
he writes
answer.
a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody.
No
Look at the
accountability.
economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far.
He did.
In fact, I got more votes than any
President.
sitting
He did,
president
and lost.
in history by far.
And lost.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you called this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control,
Obama
you have,
did.
no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going?
That's a
door
good
to door in this
question.
country?
Good question.
It is much higher.
Take us
because
through
of
it.
them. They allow criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela
It's down.
crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not
Yeah.
worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except
But
here.
it's
Crime
high
is
here.
up and through the roof, despite their
It is.
fraudulent statements that they made. Crime
I'm
in this
standing on
country
that.
is through the roof.
It is.
And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening
Mm-hmm.
at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime.
Top
It was
20,
a fraud.
18
Just
is
like
Democrats.
The number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President
That's
Trump, thank
good.
you. I'll let you respond, Vice President.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security.
Never went to
crimes,
jail.
Economic crimes.
Nigga left on a
election
plane.
Interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
He like us.
Where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page.
Move forward away
of
from
this
God.
Same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people.
Hey, I agree. She shouldn't have mentioned that at all. He about to get her.
Which I have a plan for.
You don't have no
Address what
plan,
we must
Harris.
do to support our small business.
Only one kind of supporters,
Address
check
bringing down
writers.
The price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with the same old tired playbook.
No, they're not.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent.
Uh-huh.
And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal.
Yeah.
You saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization.
Weaponization.
Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department.
Yep.
Every one of those cases.
The Secret
was
Service
involved with the DOJ
resigned.
from Atlanta and Fonnie Willis
Mhm.
to the
Letitia
Attorney
Bragg.
General of New York and the DA in New York.
Alvin
Every
Bragg,
one of those
Letitia
cases.
James.
And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. Now, what
But he was
happened
too
in my
dumb
documents case?
to go to court.
That's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization.
Yeah.
They used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election.
Yep.
With fake cases.
President
Fake
Trump, thank
cases.
you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk
Answer
about
that question.
extreme and understand the context
See?
in which this election in
Extreme.
2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president
You asked her
would
about
essentially be
weaponization.
immune from any
Weaponization.
misconduct if he
That
were
was
to
the
enter
question,
the White House
Harris.
again.
Weaponization.
Understand, this is someone who
He's
has
stonewalling.
openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States.
Ain't nobody
And
gonna
he would
terminate the
weaponize
Constitution.
The
Stop it.
Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly
He asked you a
expressed
question.
disdain for members of our military. Understand.
Come on.
what it
Y'all left
means
in
if Donald Trump were
Afghanistan.
back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly
That's
we know
not true.
now
That's a
the
human
court
being.
won't
He
stop
got
it. We know
guardrails.
J.D.
Checks and
Vance is not gonna
balances.
stop him.
Checks
It's
and
up to the
balances,
American
y'all.
people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
Vice
Word
President
salad.
Harris, in your last run for president,
We got
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get. Lindsay?
What you got?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking.
Ooh,
and,
flip-flop.
You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now you're
They throwing
campaigning
hardballs
says you
now.
don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I
Flip-flop.
know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your values
Ooh.
changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made.
Go ahead.
Particularly, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance
Drill,
on
baby,
foreign
drill.
oil.
Flip-flop.
We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history
Mm-hmm.
because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil.
Sound like
As it
Trump to
relates
me.
my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class
We-
kid.
come on,
raised
we
by a
heard that
hardworking
part.
mother who worked and
Oh, my
saved
God.
and was able to buy our first home when I was a
Stonewalling.
teenager. The
Stonewalling.
values I bring to the importance of home ownership.
Stonewalling.
Everybody got handed $400 million.
She
on
answered
the
half the
ladder
question.
And filed bankruptcy 6 times. Is the value that I bring to my work.
Wow.
That we are going to work with the private
Answer the
sector and home
question.
builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes.
It's
by the end of my first
impossible.
term.
3 million homes. We don't even have 3 million people to build each home themselves. Knock it off.
Actually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then
What's
on
she talking
protecting
about?
women and children from violent crime is based on a value
Oh, my
that is
God.
deeply grounded in
Project
the importance
2025.
of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that
He
is
did
about
not answer the
protecting
question.
Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors.
He did not
from
answer the
scams.
question.
My values
She lied.
have not changed.
She said,
And
"I'ma
what is
answer those
important
questions."
is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people
You're not
up
lifting nobody up.
and not beating people down.
That's what you're doing right now.
Calling. The true measure of the leader
Come on.
is the leader who actually understands that strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people
Okay.
up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump.
Okay, but you ain't that right now.
Given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars. Many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that.
She brought it up.
She's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever.
Yeah.
She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it.
All right,
okay?
Tucci.
They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Woo! He got her.
Please.
He got her.
Does that sound familiar? She went out. She went out
40.
in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens.
Ooh.
This
Wow.
is a radical left.
Wow. Come on,
That would
Harris.
do
You go.
this.
I
She
mean,
wants to
Harris.
confiscate your guns, and you will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before.
Yeah.
When they took over,
Keystone
they
Pipeline.
got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices
big
were
clip.
going up the roof. They
40
immediately
minutes
let
in.
these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline.
Yeah.
So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil. These are not good things for the environment that she understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all
Come
know
on,
is a
man.
cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a
Harris, you better get him.
moment of crisis.
Yes, a better Black America,
On
baby.
January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered
Fact.
peacefully and patriotically. I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully.
She's speaking on Trump
and patriotically.
more than anything.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was
Yeah.
the border czar, remember that. She
Yeah,
was the
right.
border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America?
Look at her face.
They're coming in from all over the world.
Look at her
David.
face.
All over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just-
When are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle?
Come
They
on.
went into Seattle. They took over a
Portland.
big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You
you.
might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Facts.
And the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago, her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi.
Here you go. Get it.
Respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the president of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
That was gangster.
And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached.
Oh, it happened.
For exactly that reason.
It happened.
But this
Jan
is not
6
an
happened.
isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville.
Oh, with the
where
veins
there
in their
was
neck.
A mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate.
Mm-hmm.
And what did the president then at the time
Good
say?
people on both
There were
sides.
fine people on each side.
Yeah. He was talking
Let's
about the rally.
remember that when
Come
they
on,
came to
Harris.
Charlottesville,
Give us something, baby. Give us something.
the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
We not going back.
Let's not go back. We're not going
We
back.
not going back.
It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law.
Come on. Closing arguments from an attorney. Let's go.
And to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, had said in this election there will be a bloodbath.
Bloodbath, baby.
This and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked.
Yeah,
Laura
Biden.
Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now.
Go to the border.
Go down to Washington, D.C. during
Okay.
this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to
Do something.
It's been so bad, it's so ridiculous.
Do something.
Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills.
Executive
They
order.
have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President.
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I heard that.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No, I
2020?
don't acknowledge it at all. I said that sarcastically, you know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Right.
He's standing on
There's
business.
so much proof. All you have to do is look at it, and they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which is what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten.
She not gonna answer if she get a
People should
question.
never be thinking about it.
Easy money flex. What up?
We need two things. We need walls. We need and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even
Right.
speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing
Look
them
at her
to come
face.
into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm lost by a whisker.
He's
We didn't
helping-
quite make
he's
it.
helping her out.
And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know
Yeah,
this,
she
that
should.
you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No judge looked at it.
and said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have standing.
Uh,
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system
See,
where a person in an
he's
election
handling the
doesn't have
room.
standing,
He's
the
controlling the
president of
moderator
United States
and Harris.
doesn't have standing? That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania,
Uh-oh.
and I'll show you. We have so many
He got
facts and
receipts.
statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's all.
He's controlling the
And
moderators
problem that we
now.
have right now
Wow.
is we have a nation
Look at her
in
face.
decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation.
Look at her
that
face.
is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice
Yeah.
President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want
Look at
to
her
ask you about
face.
something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump
Uh-oh.
about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials.
he shouldn't have said
says, will be
that.
prosecuted to the full
He shouldn't have
extent
said
of the
that.
law, which will include long-term prison sentences.
He shouldn't have said that.
One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And
Hey,
clearly
Obama
he had
is in her
very difficult
ear.
time processing
She got
that.
an earpiece on. Obama give it. That was good. Obama in her ear.
President of the United
That was good,
States
Harris.
who attempts,
I'ma
as
give
he
you
did
one.
in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell
in
you
that ear.
that I have
He got an
traveled the
earpiece.
world as Vice President of the United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Yeah, right.
I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way
She calling
in a
out.
presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we
Harris,
do
this is
not
a
have
debate,
the
not a
ambition
discussion.
or
Come on, sister.
temperament, or the ability to not be confused.
Don't talk with your hands.
Deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
Victimization.
Limited response,
Hey,
Fred.
let me just say
She said nothing.
Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up?
Biden,
He said,
Harris.
because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him.
Yeah.
China was afraid of him.
Yep.
North Korea was afraid of
Kim,
him.
yep.
Look
Rocket
at what's
Man.
going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him.
He rolled up
I
on
ended
Putin.
the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country,
Yeah.
he ended that. But he let
Keystone.
the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man
Whoa.
you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if you weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did,
And she didn't
you
get
talk
none.
about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million
Ooh,
votes.
he
They
hates
threw
her.
him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
Your time
I
is up.
think we're going to do very well.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war, messages were still being held American.
They should have let her respond to that one.
Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how. Saying international humanitarian law must be respected.
It's getting tough
Israel
now. This is a
must
tough
do more to
question.
protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. More than 100 hostages remain. Just last week,
She better not mention Trump on this one. He ain't had nothing to do with this.
Deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7th, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Okay.
slaughtered.
Y'all could have went and got
1,200
Hamas, not
many of
genocide
them
the
young people
Palestinians.
who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely.
So
I say
kill all the
understand.
Palestinians?
Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too
Don't
many
mention Trump.
innocent Palestinians have been killed.
Genocide.
Children and mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately. And the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out.
How you gonna get one?
And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Yeah, it don't matter.
Work around the clock, also understanding that we must
Burning the
chart
candle
a
from both
course
ends.
for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there
Wow.
must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will
40,000.
assure you always,
Don't blame
I
him.
will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular
Because you married
as it
to
relates to- as it
Doug,
relates to
the
Iran
Jewish man Doug.
and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security,
No, they're
self-determination,
dead.
and the dignity they so rightly
They
deserve.
did. They killed them all.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and
If I was president, it would have never happened. Never happened. Never happened.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, and far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused
Yeah,
to
the
be there.
Democrats
She
didn't
was
meet,
at a
and they
sorority
turned
party
their
of
backs
hers.
on
She
him
wanted
in
to
the
go
joint
to
House of
sorority
Congress.
party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty
If they
good at
president.
predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Great point.
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the
Ooh.
whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump.
Wow.
Now Iran has $300 billion because they
He
took
dodged
out
that
all
question, and
sanctions that I had. Iran had
he
no
get to
money
say
for
what he's saying right
Hamas
now.
or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money.
And he
It was a
talking
big
till they say
story.
stop.
You know, he covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And
Yeah.
now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at
6
what's
billion
happening
was frozen.
with the Houthis and Yemen.
No, 6 billion
Look at
too.
what's
She 6
going
billion
on
was
in the Middle
frozen.
East.
Biden
This would have
unfroze
never
6
happened.
billion.
I will get
Put 'em
that
back on
settled
with the-
and fast
remember the
after
fist bump?
war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
With
Ooh.
President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
No,
Ooh.
that's absolutely not true.
I love him.
My entire career and life supported Israel.
Say I
and
love him.
Israeli people. He knows that.
He don't know that.
Trying to, again, divide
Why don't you say,
and
I love
distract
Israel?
from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one,
No.
according to himself.
Nah.
It is well known.
You keep your friends close and your
that he
enemies
said
closer.
of Putin
You pull up on Putin. You pull up on Kim Jong-un. You pull up on Rocket Man.
Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with.
But he
Kim
opened up, it
Jong-un.
would have never happened.
And it is
That was the
absolutely
only
well
thing he said.
known
But
that
you're
these
right,
dictators
Dr. Taylor.
and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because there's so
Yeah, there's a whole lot of people rooting for him to be president.
with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders.
I bet you Doug can't stand her when she
have
get
told
mad.
me,
Look at
you
her.
are a disgrace. That is why we understand.
Why is she
that we
attacking
have
him
to
like
have a
that?
President who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
You ain't said nothing.
And she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168
He's controlling the
different
moderators.
countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just asked one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the
Mess up my
single
401k.
biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere
Facts.
in the world, going to Germany and all over Europe?
You don't even know what that is.
Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, is
President
paying a lot
That's
of
what we voting
We have a
for.
lot of issues to get to.
That's what we voting for.
Much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
So they're going to commercial. I'm gonna cut because I'm watching it on the local station. But let me see here. Personal. I'm in the comments. Personal attacks are not her lane, so she should stop it. So I'm believing that Harris is, talking to him like he got in trouble and that she's his wife. I don't know, but in the sense of stonewalling, both of them are dodging questions, and this is not a good thing. I hope this is the last debate, but this is crazy. So let me get in these comments. Let me see here. Another one, both funded, so doesn't matter. And I'm assuming that Tushi is talking about both funded Israel, okay, because Trump stands with Israel. The Biden-Harris administration stands with Israel as well. And she's talking about a peace talk, but you're funding both ends of the situation. Let me see here. Work around the clock is not the answer. Clearly on this issue, I see that has no answer. It looks like, we all know what a filibuster is. They filibustering, they're stonewalling, they lying, they dodging questions. Okay, let me see here. Putin pulled a fast one, panicked and tried to take Ukraine in 3 days. But yeah, you see how that panned out, because how long that war been going on, the Ukraine war. But Trump is under the belief in his own mind that the war would have never happened. Okay, now let me see here. So January 6th never really happened. Oh, no, it's on my birthday. So I know that happened, and they ran up in the White House. But on the back end of that, when they talk about it's not, it's power principalities and all of that, when you look at what's going on with Jan 6, they did have meetings, and Nancy Pelosi, the speaker of the House, is responsible for security, and there is on record the fact that they had these hearings that they did have the Secret Service, not the Secret Service, but they did not call in the National Guard, and there was a bomb threat at the Democratic office, and they didn't even follow up with that. So it was a whole lot going on. So we got to be honest with ourselves. So listen, I can only offer you, this is what I'm working with the Jesus Christ campaign. I'm a campaign strategist. I decided to put the tie on. I'm rocking my cream and gold because, like I said, we got to figure this thing out, because neither side is for us. And we really got to understand that. Okay, we've been doing this thing for far too long. And one thing that I do agree with Harris is time to move forward and turn the page. And we as a race of people got to depart from this two-party system, because there need to be somebody adult in the room. You see how the moderators can control both sides and mute the mics? There need to be a group of people, the remnant, that can actually, get both sides to sit down and work together and to basically face these issues instead of going back and forth. Okay, because like I said, this is monumental. Okay, and like I said, I know without a shadow of a doubt that this more than likely, I hope this is the last debate, because it's not turning people either way And if you tuned on a little later when they talked about abortion, they asked her, Harris, and this was one of the talking points. They asked her, would she consider putting limits on abortion? And she basically, did the filibuster to Stonewall. So that means she will not put any types of terms on it. And Donald Trump went on record and said he supports it going back to the states, and he supports, let me see here, term limits, the life of the parent, the life of the mother, the health of the mother, and statutory rape and incest, things like that. So he did go on record. And then if you did miss it, the Project 2025, he disavowed that. He talked about it. He spoke on it and said he never read it. He don't know the people that's pushing it. So he distanced himself from that. And even when he said that, she doubled down. And I guess the talking points was to pretty much push the envelope. And to be honest, somebody just texted me and said she got an earpiece in, because some of her comebacks are good, but it seems like she's doing closing arguments as a attorney, but she's not, speaking to the jury in terms of pleading the case. So that's the only issue I have. Because like I said, I don't have no skin in the game. I'm a nonpartisan independent. I'm with the Jesus Christ Commission. Okay, this is who we're voting for. So if you're not a Trump supporter, or if you're not with Harris, join the crusade, because we'll love to have you. They back on. So here we go.
Tonight, we're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5
back at the war in Ukraine. Here we go.
Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being useless.
Good answer.
People being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more.
250
because
billion.
They don't ask Europe, which is a much
and they can't run
beneficiary
reparations
to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO.
Whoa,
they paid
Biden
billions
and you.
And billions, hundreds
You need to say her name.
of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try to get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened.
Millions and
fact,
billions.
When I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him.
Look at her
He had
face.
no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead. And it's
Look at her
only
face.
getting
Who's
worse.
she looking at?
Lead
Ain't
to
nobody in the
World War
crowd.
III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify,
They throw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president
It's a lame duck.
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest
To
get
stop
this war
it.
finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to
He didn't
this
take
to
the
Vice President
bait.
Harris. I want to get your thoughts.
What you got, Harris?
on support for Ukraine in this moment.
Please
But
don't
also,
mention Trump.
As Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important
Back
to
with them
remind the
hands.
former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over
Wow.
within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's
Wow.
not who we are as Americans.
He asked
Let's
you a
understand
direct
what
question,
happened here.
counselor.
I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia
He came to
invaded,
Washington.
tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to define one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could
Y'all
defend
met with him
himself.
because y'all gave him
Days
some money.
later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the
Millions of
ammunition,
people
the
died.
artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president,
War-torn.
Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
Wouldn't be no war.
And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the
boy.
importance of the greatest military
Come on, man.
alliance
That was
the
your
world's ever
opportunity
known,
to
which is
speak.
NATO. And what we
That's all you could do is attack
to
him.
preserve the ability of Zelensky and
Kamala,
Ukraine to
Kamala.
fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest
Coulda,
of
woulda,
Europe,
shoulda.
starting with
What would you
Poland.
do?
And
You've been in
Lana,
office. Come on, sis.
800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania, how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship
Man.
with what is known to be a
Gee,
dictator
come on, man.
who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you. on
Yeah,
Ukraine
somebody in
tonight.
her ear.
Afghanistan came up in the last
That's
hour.
an earpiece.
I wanted you to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been
He's
sitting in
controlling
Moscow,
the moderator.
quiet place. He would have been sitting
Shut up,
in
Harris.
Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started.
And what happened?
3 days later, he went in and he started the war.
Didn't
Because
happen.
Everything they said was weak and stupid.
Ooh.
They did the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with
Nice word,
Zelensky
emissary.
and Putin, and she did.
Harris, be
And the war
quiet.
started
Your
3
mic
days
is
later.
muted.
And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden, in my opinion. I think he's the worst
Ooh.
president in the history of our
You
country.
can't be worse than Biden.
She goes down as the worst vice president
Wow, I
in the
think-
history of our country. But let me tell you something.
He's
She is
controlling
a
the moderator.
horrible negotiator.
3
They
minutes.
sent her in to negotiate.
Look,
As soon as
he's
they left,
controlling
Putin did the
The whole
invasion.
thing.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fight.
Answer the question. Did you meet with Putin?
When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I now met with him over 5 times.
Did you meet with Putin?
The reality
Didn't say
is it has
Zelensky.
been about
He asked her
standing as
about
America
Putin.
Always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength,
asked
understanding
her,
that the alliances we have around
have she
the world
ever
are
met
dependent
with Putin?
on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about
Great point.
democracy. And that is very much what is at
Terrible
stake here.
outcome.
The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president.
You see these
who
memes? See how he
understands
looking?
The significance
And then
of
look at her
America's
face.
role and responsibility.
These are all the
In
frames
terms
we're
of
going to see.
ensuring that there is stability,
Straight
and
face,
ensuring we
and look at her
stand
face.
up for our principles and not sell them for the
Him
for the
smiling and she
benefit
angry.
of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and
Wow.
Vladimir Putin. I do want to
She
talk
don't
about
understand
against
how this
that came
game
up
go.
in the first hour of this debate. I wanted to move on to again.
No, don't. No, shut up, Trump.
The most amazing thing.
Come
I've
on,
ever seen.
moderate.
He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen, for years, we were paying almost all of NATO.
See,
We were being
they're
ripped
supposed
off
to
by
move on.
European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got
He's
them
too
to pay
passionate.
up by saying one of the statements you made before.
Too
If you
passionate.
don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most
He can't even-
incredible jobs that he's
Mute
ever
the
seen
mic,
done.
bro.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the.
Oh, no. Let's not talk about Afghanistan.
Honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Do you bear any
Well,
responsibility?
I agree with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million
Do
a day.
you
We were
bear
paying for
any
that endless war.
responsibility?
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty
Do
in a combat zone in
you
any
take
war zone
any
around the world first time this
responsibility?
century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president,
Oh, my God.
negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He called himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said
Come on,
it
Harris.
was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down.
The question was, do you bear any responsibility how we left
He
Afghanistan?
negotiated
He
directly
attacks.
with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 terrorists.
A president
Taliban
should have a
terrorists
posture
released.
to not
And get
curse
this,
people
now
out.
get this.
It's called temperament.
And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us
Come
as
on,
Americans,
man.
a place where we honor
They playing a
the importance
record
of
player in their
American
ears.
diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president,
Wow.
invited them
Come on, man.
to Camp David.
You keep your
because he does
friends
not, again,
close
appreciate the
and
role
enemies
and
closer.
responsibility
It's called
of the
the
President
art
of the United
of
States.
war.
Be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold.
Do you bear any responsibility for how we left
the United
Afghanistan was the
States of
question.
America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations
Yeah, thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban.
Look at her
because
face.
the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved.
Wow.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is
Abdul.
still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than that, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind. And we wouldn't
Left
have
all our
we would
equipment.
have left $85 billion worth
Equipment.
of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And
Yeah.
just to finish, they blew it.
And ISIS got all that right now.
You have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I wanna move on.
And these people did the worst.
He's controlling the
withdrawal,
moderator.
And in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics.
Like,
in this
you
country.
murder
Mr.
me.
President, you recently said that Vice President Harris
Keep your
spoke
cool, Harris.
when
Keep
she
your
was
cool.
alive
Don't let him
a
get you
number
too
of
hot.
years
You're already
ago.
hot.
She happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I
Ooh.
want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't
Good
care
answer.
what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was
Good answer.
not black that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. I know one was okay with me. That's up to her.
Leave it alone, Trump.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think
Are you black?
honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has
That was social media.
consistently, over the course of his career,
Indo-Jamaican.
attempted to use race to divide the American people.
You
I
Indian?
do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want
But she not black though.
this kind of approach.
Because she could say it right now. I'm the
constantly
sister from
trying to
Oaktown.
divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a land. He owned land. He owned buildings.
Wow.
He was investigated.
He's messing up now.
Because he refused to rent property to black families.
I wouldn't want them broke niggas in my house either. No, I'm just playing.
Who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young
Yeah.
black and Latino
They in her ear.
boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president
That
of
was
the
for
United
her.
States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in
He's just
each other
winging
a
it.
neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have
CJ, he
discourse
dodged the question.
about
He
how
knew
we're
he
going
knew
to
this was
invest in the
for her.
aspirations
So
and
he
the
dodged the
ambitions
question
and
at all
dreams of the
costs.
American people. Knowing that regardless
I don't care. I don't care.
of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those.
Nah, we want
without any
reparation.
division.
I'm sorry.
Vice President Harris. Thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
Yeah, moving on.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things.
And he gets the
like
last word tonight.
what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger.
Build
But
back
they're
better.
destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single.
No, we're gonna have to
policy-
talk about that too,
Remember
Shin.
this. She is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away
Better
from Biden.
education
I don't know
is a
what
part of
she
that.
says.
But we'll
She
talk
is
about it.
Biden. The worst inflation
Better
we've ever
leadership.
had.
Amen.
A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad that you can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time's up.
I wanted to respond to that, though. I wanted to respond briefly.
Briefly.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden.
Yes, you
And
are.
I'm certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Nah,
One who
I'm fighting for my
believes
generation.
in what is
We going
possible,
back,
one
baby.
who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do
You
to
can believe
to strengthen our small businesses, which is why
Man,
I have a plan. Let's talk about
40%
our
of small
plans
businesses
and-
didn't come back after
and let's
COVID.
compare the plans. I have a plan.
You don't have no plan.
Give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction.
Yeah, give us
To
50,000 to
pursue
start the
their
business.
ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work.
Sounds good.
$6,000.
Student
for
loans.
young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is
Look at
about
his face
allowing
and look at her
people to be
face.
able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the
That's
kind of
HUD.
conversation, I believe, David.
That's the 3% of first-time home buyers. That's been in existence for the last 30 years. Come on now.
Belittling and name calling.
You're doing all the name
Turn
calling.
the page.
Vice President
and move
Harris.
forward.
Look at this.
President Trump.
No. No.
To defund the police. She has the plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She has a
you have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
areas.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I can say
President Trump,
President Trump has
No,
said to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry, we're gonna respond by President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running.
Ooh,
You have long
they shut her
vowed
down.
to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as
Obamacare.
You failed to accomplish
It actually
that.
was Hillary
Now
Care
you're
before
gonna
that.
Keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a
9
plan?
years.
And can you tell us what it is?
Medicare, Medicaid.
Lousy healthcare. Always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been
taking
good
notes,
to
so
just
let's see
let
what
it
she
rot
got.
and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain.
Come on,
I had
man.
a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what
very
we will
expensive.
do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then
Run
I
it.
would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
He didn't
So
mention
just
her.
yes or no, you still do
Policy.
not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
I have concepts.
we come up with
Should
something,
listen to her.
would only
I have
change
a
it if we
plan.
come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts
Hey,
and
Harris.
options we have.
Get this to Harris,
do
y'all.
that. And you'll be
Clearly, he don't have a
in the
plan.
not too
That's what she
distant
should say.
Vice President Harris, in 2017,
He don't have a
you
plan.
Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
Uh-oh.
2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely.
What's your plan?
supported over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options, but what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But
Okay.
I'll get to that. Lindsay.
What's
I
your
just need to
plan?
respond to a previous point that the former president had
Oh,
made.
Lord.
I made very clear my position on fracking, and then.
What's
this is
your
about taking
plan on
guns
health
away.
care? She talking about
Come on, not those
fracking.
dollars. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president,
She don't have one
60
either.
times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States
Man, she
Senate.
telling stories, man.
Late,
She should
late
do a
John
podcast.
McCain,
This is a
who
debate.
you have disparaged as being you don't like him, you
Uh-oh.
said at the time because
had a Joe Biden
he got
moment.
caught. He was an American hero. The late great John McCain, I will never
Why
forget
keep bringing
that
up this stuff, man?
night.
We all
Walked
got
onto the Senate
skeletons in
floor
our
and
closet.
said, "No,
Should he
you
bring up
don't.
Willie Brown?
No, you don't. No, you
Montiel?
don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan.
No
And
plan.
what the Affordable
There it
Care
is.
Act has done is eliminate the
Stand on that no
ability
plan,
of
Harris.
insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing
No
conditions.
plan. Stand on
I
that.
have to tell people watching
Don't tell
tonight,
the story.
Remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child
Man,
had
come
asthma,
on, man. The
if
working
someone was
class
a
got
cancer
tight.
survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes, and thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American
That
people.
split screen, they
And
trying to
Donald Trump
catch
said
him
he
with
was gonna
some
allow
facial
Medicare to negotiate
reactions, and he
drug-
understands.
Drug prices, he never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice
He's going
president,
to bring it up.
we have capped the cost of prescription medication for
Everything
seniors at $2,000
that she's talking
a year.
about,
And
the
when
Trump
I am
administration has
president,
done.
we will do that
Watch
for all
this.
people understanding
Watch this.
that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get
So
rid
that's
of
her
it.
plan.
That's
Strengthen the Affordable Care Act.
Donald Trump stands on
I
that.
want to move to an issue that's important.
No,
for
no,
a
no.
lot
Made
of
a mistake. And number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of
He's
the
controlling the
Democrats that
moderator.
kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People are
Trump.
paying privately for insurance.
Mute
that
his
work
mic.
hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait.
Want us all on the
6 months
county.
for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another
Ooh.
issue that we'd like to get to that's
Let her
important for
respond.
Americans, in particular younger voters,
Well,
and
it's
that's
a fact,
climate
then.
change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change
He
is a hoax.
asked you,
And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state with
what's
experienced
your
these extreme weather
plan?
occurrences, who now it's either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up.
What's
You
your
ask
plan?
anybody
Jacked up,
who
huh?
has
What's your
been,
plan?
The victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go.
What's your
We know
plan on
that
climate
we can
change?
actually deal with this issue. The young people of America
What's
care
your
deeply
plan
about this
on
issue.
climate
And I
change?
am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion
trillion.
in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president.
Has nothing to do
We
with
have
climate change.
invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs.
During COVID.
And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know
I
that
agree,
part of
Dr.
building
Taylor.
a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It
Sounds
includes
like
growing what we can do around American manufacturing
Sounds
and
like-
opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened
moved
under
them from
Donald Trump.
Mexico.
President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building
Facts.
these massive plants, and they think they're going to
That's
sell
why
their
my
cars
Ford stock
into the
is low.
United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates.
Oh,
This
man.
Tonight, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back to you.
Man, closing statements, and Trump gets the last laugh. So I don't think this is going to sway it either way. But let me get in these comments. Let me see here. He lied. McCain could not have fought Obamacare for 10 years when Obamacare wasn't in existence. The math ain't adding up. But if you understand the prior to his administration, that Hillary had it actually was called Hillary Care. Okay. And they basically, John McCain was the chair of that. And all they did was just change the name when Obama became president, because when she was Secretary of State, they was working on it. I remember it. And they just basically cut and paste. They pretty much put Obamacare, which was actually Hillary Care. And if you remember when she ran for president, she basically was talking about Hillary Care. Okay, so let me see here. We need better leadership. Give us education. I'm over reparations. Shit. Give us. I just lost some advertising. I just cussed. I'm sorry. Give us better environments. And I believe, and that's Tushi, that we should basically put a reparations bill on the table that includes education, that includes sovereignty, that includes safety, that includes education, that will basically change the trajectory of a group of people who have been, dealing with issues since its existence in this country, dated back over 400 years ago in Jamestown, Virginia, and went through, the 1800s, the civil rights, all the way up to from 1865, all the way up to the civil rights movement, all of that. So there's some promissory things that's on the table. And there's a thing called the Freedmen's Bank Bureau. Abraham Lincoln put away $8 million back in 1865 for the newly freed slave, in to basically help them out, because over 300,000 newly freed slaves, instead of going to Canada, they enlisted in the Union Army and created the black regiments and helped this country defeat the Democratic Dixiecratic South. And then at the assassin's bullet, when they killed Abraham Lincoln, they took the Freedmen's Bank Bureau money. Okay. And Otis Howard was the commissioner of it, Tushi. And that's where you get Howard University from. So if you do the $8 million back in 1865 with interest, you're talking about $300 million that needs to be dispersed to, black folk. Because like I said, I'm standing on that one, but we can actually invest in education. We can invest in, killing, ending poverty, ending crime. I don't care what we do with it. We just need to end racial matters in America, because there's only one race, and that's the human race. And clearly Donald Trump, I agree, has no medical plan. His answer was, I'm not in office yet, but Harris does have the Affordable Care Act that they need to actually improve. So I'm going to give her the nod on that one. Let me see here. What else we got in these comments? Let me see here. But Texas and Nevada or Florida for the elderly is different, work financially, because taxes work differently. And Nevada, Florida, and Texas are literally almost like swing states. And if you did not know, just recently, Trump is favored in Texas. He's favored in Nevada, and he's favored in Florida. And I'm not talking about blue wall states. I'm talking about swing states. So it's like 7 states that's actually going to be pretty much decide the election, because like everything else is like California, Oregon, Washington. So this is why in the state of California, it's no harm, no foul. We'll be writing in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, just to let them know when it's time for us to have a conversation and a discussion, we won't be connected with the Democratic Party. Because one thing that I disagree with Harris is when she dodged the question, they asked her as president, will you sign a bill with term limits on abortion? And she dodged that question, because 7 states in the United States have basically, no term limits. Okay. And there has been an instant of a situation in the state of Virginia where the baby was delivered with a heartbeat, and they just let the baby just pretty much breathe out on the table. So that's actually fact. So I'm a fan of term limits. I'm a fan of if it's the health of the mother, rape or incest. But we all know, God knows us in our mother's womb. So if it has a heartbeat and you hearing a heartbeat, that's a heartbeat. So I do agree with that. But in terms of no term limits, I can't. That's the deal breaker for me. So we're going to get back to it, and let's go.
Time has come for closing statements.
Closing statements.
Harris, we begin with you.
Don't mention Trump, Harris. Please,
So I
okay.
think you've heard tonight two
You're a
very
lawyer.
different
Close the show.
visions for our country.
Close the show.
One that is focused on the future,
Come on.
and the other that is focused on the past,
Closing arguments.
and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was the DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
Boo. No disrespect.
So you just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just asked one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other.
You'll min it up.
Nuclear weapons,
That's
the
it.
power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away
His time's up.
to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC
Wow.
presidential debate from here in the National Constitution
Man.
Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank
Ooh,
you for watching here.
Lord
Viewers
have
from
mercy.
all over the world and from all of us here.
Oh, Lord.
Good night.
Good night. Man, who idea was for him to have the closing arguments? And I went through the comments, and I'm gonna give the comment of the award to Tushi, because Tushi says, "Why I'm an independent, seriously, and I'm a nonpartisan independent, and like I said, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm here just to call it how I see it, and I don't want to sound biased or anything like that, but in a sense of just watching the debate." Watching a individual who shows some temperament, kept everything in check, kept a smile on their face, pretty much showed resolve. And you had another individual that was posturing, making all the faces and allowing the things that was said to affect them, writing down and, these faces. And I'm just going to tell you right now, tomorrow and the days to come, that's all you're going to see is these facial expressions. Somebody's going to put in an AI and somebody's going to do a clip with all their facial expressions. And Her face says it all. I'm not even going to call it either way, but her face said it all. In any and everything that she said about former President Trump, he pretty much controlled the moderators and was able to get that talking point out the way, say what he needed to say, controlled the moderator, and then got back to the question at hand. But you looked at a situation where has not been swayed either way. Now, if you are a nonpartisan independent and you haven't made a decision, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we writing in Jesus Christ. I'm telling you, it's right here to my right, to the left of your screen. And there's, like I said, we're in the state of California, no harm, no foul, but we need to abandon this two-party system. And as a, registered Democrats, we need to pretty much, leave this thing alone, because there need to be, somebody, in the room with some common sense. Because what I looked at, it was, crazy. And I got a lawyer in the room, agreed the weak closing argument rumbling on. And like I said, she's been, every question that was asked, she pretty much did a closing argument or told her story. They asked her some key questions and she didn't even answer the question. And some of those key questions was, a yes or no, or a question that you can actually, answer so the American people will know exactly what you're saying or what you could possibly do. But in the sense of just, what we call a filibuster or stonewalling and not answering questions, because they talked about abortion. And that was a very strong position for the Democrats. And I was thinking that she was going to, get some kudos on that point. But when Trump came out and said that he was for term limits, for the life of the mother, for rape and incest, and when they asked him about, banning Roe versus Wade or signing some legislation to basically take away abortion, he basically said, we've already done it with the Supreme Court justices that I put in, and it's now a state's issue. It shouldn't be the federal government, the federal government making decisions on what, mothers would do with their children. But he's basically said that it needs to go to the states. And then when they asked her and basically said that, Trump made it clear he supports term limits. He's, for the life of the mother, for, rape and incest. So if you are if elected, Harris, would you sign a bill or legislation to support term limits? And she pretty much basically said, I support the woman's rights to choose. So that is a, so that was one. And then the question of, is she black or not? That was another one. And he was smart because, like I said, that's some internet stuff. That's some stuff that was trending in the hood, and only black people could have that conversation because all black folk ain't kinfolk. I know some people from Ghana, from Somalia and all of that. They black, but they ain't, down with us like that. And we've had these conversations, and that's not a conversation for a white man to have. And I'm sure somebody told him, do not touch. He said, I don't care. He left it alone, but she already had her word salad or her dissertation in the sense of talking about her race. But she did not go on record and say that she is a black woman, even though she had the black experience, because her birth certificate came out. It's listed as Caucasian. She's the daughter of a biracial immigrant from Jamaica and a Indian. And she's trending all on social media and TikTok by basically saying that she's, Asian, of Asian descent. And that's the crazy thing. So let me see here. All praise to the Most High. So Tushi, all praise to the Most High. So listen, I'm sure you understand that Jesus paid the price for us all. He paid the cost. OK, so he didn't come to change the scribe of the Pharisees, which is today's modern Republican or Democrat. He didn't come to do that. He came to fulfill. So what he's asking and he's ordaining us to do is write his name in. And that's like basically putting our layers of protection, because regardless of who wins the election, we will be protected. So that's what we're doing. And we're in the state of California. It's not going to matter either way. But the reparations organizations and the groups that's, that pretty much took the L because our, California legislator black caucuses did not put the vote to the floor. They are vowing to turn it purple for voting third party or for Trump. And I'm saying, don't go to Trump, write in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Let me see here. I'll be writing in Jesus Christ. It's a vote for my conscience. Exactly. Because on election day, I want you to go ahead, write his name in, go get you some wine or whatever you do, sit down and watch that election. And when that name pop up, we're going to party. Because if you didn't know, the biggest writing candidate in American history got 9% in the state of North Carolina, and it was D's Nuts. So if D's Nuts could get 9% in the state of North Carolina for in a presidential election, we could at least get Jesus Christ to trend in the double digits. Okay, here, yes, sir. Okay, definitely agreed. All right, so listen, and what the words say when we get on one sheet of music, when we agree. Okay, we trying to get the Holy Ghost to drop. Okay, we getting on what we call one accord. Let me see here, brother. I love this channel and I love our discussion. Thank you. And once again, you are so welcome. God bless you, Tushi. And I thank you, for tuning in and pray for us, because it's like it's time to go up. It's time to take it to a whole nother level. All right, let me see here. So listen, man, it's been like I said, I can't, I'm not going to call it either way. It's not my job to do so. Jesus, he didn't come to change the scribes and Pharisees. So because if you are a Harris supporter, you believe she won. And, if you're a head snapping sister, she told him, but the plan was to get him off of his cool, and he stood his ground and he made sure, he did what he did. And like I said, I can't call it either way. But like I said, they both was dodging questions and all of that stuff. But for me, the key talking point was she black, on how he let that one go. And then the abortion thing, that right there, that's a tough one for me, because I believe there needs to be term limits or something to that magnitude. And let me see here. I did put in some notes, got a lot of flip flopping, stonewalling. Okay. And then the border situation, that question, without shadow of doubt that Trump wanted to build a wall. And if you did not know, Harris put out a campaign ad, and the little portion of Trump's border wall that was actually built, she basically said they showed that in the ad. But basically, you are with a prosecutor who prosecuted transnational criminals and all that. And they showed the border wall. So that's a flip flop as well. And one thing that I didn't hear her say, what I thought was, I'm laser focused and all of that. And then the one types of supporters, she went on record and said, check writers. And let me see here. And Biden record. The Afghanistan situation was tough for her to answer, because she is the president of the United, the vice president. She said she was the last person in the room, and the Afghanistan had to go to the other side. And I say the other side, I would get out a nod to Trump. But in the sense of overall, I don't believe that this moved the needle. And I think they should both get on the campaign trail and go ahead and convince, their supporters to continue to support, because it is what it is. But we're going to be writing in Jesus Christ for president. It is what it is. So, man, that's my broadcast. I thank y'all for tuning in. And if you just tuned in, man, go ahead and watch the playback and go ahead and dissect it yourself, and let the people know how you feel. Because like I said, for a nonpartisan independent, Trump was classic Trump. I was impressed with his posture and his demeanor. He didn't get frazzled. But Harris was pretty much, she did a Joe Biden. Everything he say something, she's all these faces and all of that. And I guarantee she's going to take a ding for that. But it didn't, change nothing either way. So with that being said, man, y'all have a beautiful day. Thanks for tuning in to the debate 2024. And thanks for tuning in to A Better Black America TV. I'm your host, Bushan Glover, signing out. Peace out. Y'all have a good one.